pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another tag. This is the ReRead Book Tag, which was created by just one reader, and I was tagged by him. So thank you for the tag, Juan. And this is a really interesting tag for me because I'm kind of ambivalent about rereading, in that I don't reread a lot. But what little rereading I have done, it's been mixed results. But rereading books I've read as an adult has gone well. The first one I can remember rereading other than for school, so I read Wuthering Heights a couple times and maybe Pride and Prejudice a couple times. But in terms of just reading for enjoyment, I reread Annie Proulx's The Shipping News about 20 years after reading it the first time. And all I remembered about it before rereading it was that I absolutely loved it, but I couldn't remember a darn thing about it. Well, I reread it a couple years ago. It's one of my favorite novels. It's just amazing. So I'm really glad that I reread that. And right now, I am rereading, and this is a real experiment for me because I read the book last year, about exactly 1 year ago, and I'm rereading it. I've never reread a book so where the first reading and the second reading were this close together. And it's going really well. Got all kinds of sticky notes in it, but it's Map and Lucia by E.F. Benson, a 1935 British comic novel. And I absolutely love it, and I think I'm loving it even more the second go around. So, have had some positive experiences with rereading, but mostly I'm looking at the new books that I haven't read and not so tempted to go back and reread. And there's a part of my brain that thinks it's a waste of time when there's all these books out there. It's the same kind of it's the same part of my brain that kept me single and rather skanky for decades. Did I say that out loud? Anyway, so it's a great tag for me, and my comments are going to be kind of coming out of some of that ambivalence. Number one, a book from your childhood that you want to reread. So honestly, every time I've reread a book from my childhood, I've hated it, bailed. I don't do well with reading children's literature as an adult. I had better luck with middle grade books, but not books I'd read before, but just books that I read for the first time. Like, what was that one? About this adorable, severely Wonder by Palacio. I love that. Hate YA as a general rule, but there was no such thing really when I was a kid. But anytime I've reread books I loved as a kid, it didn't go well. But I am still curious, and I bought this for that purpose. Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers. This lovely facsimile hardcover reprint. I read this exact same edition from the library, and I loved this book so much as a kid, but I think I'll probably hate it as an adult. Yeah, me and children's lit don't get along. But there's two more children's lit books that I'm curious about because they meant a lot. So another one is a British children's novel, The Greatest Gresham by Gillian Avery. I write down, I think it was published in the 1950s. I read a paperback. I can still see the cover of that paperback. And I remember that I really liked it, and for some reason, even just the physical book captured my imagination before, during, and after having read it, and I think about that book all the time. But I don't remember anything about it, so I want to reread it, but maybe it won't go well. And a book from 1878, a French children's book by Hector Malot. The English title is Nobody's Boy. And my grandparents had a copy that was printed around not much later than this was published. I think it was published in around 1896 or 1900. And I can still visualize the cover. I think I'll be able to find the image of that cover, and I'll put it up here. But it's a book about an orphan in France. And I think that it struck me so deeply because I was an adoptee, and I think my grandmother kind of pushed it on me to read because of that, although she didn't say it. But that story has always stuck with me. I don't remember very much about it, but it was an important book in forming my identity as an adoptee, actually. Okay, number two, a book you want to reread because you didn't like it the first time. I'll just go through these very quickly. These are not books that I hated, but they are books that I didn't love, and everybody else on BookTube or Litzy or among my reading friends really loved them. and I'm kind of curious to try a reread to see, was I just having a bad week or a bad month, and maybe it'll hit me right on a second go around. Tin Man by Sarah Winman. The Essex Serpent, Sarah Perry. And Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders. Those were all 2 or 3 star reads for me, whereas they were like 17-star reads for everybody else on BookTube. Kind of curious to try them again, but pretty low priority. That's my honest answer to that. I would also add Home Fires by Camilla Shamsi, which I didn't like very much at all. And some of the booktubers whose tastes usually overlap with mine will absolutely love that book. A book you want to reread because you read it a long time ago. This question is prompt number 3. A couple Canadian classics. Margaret Lawrence novel from 1964, The Stone Angel. I read it when I was about 15, and I think a lot of it went over my head, but I remember really enjoying it. But I'd like to reread it as an adult, and I haven't read much else by her. And also, he's kind of largely forgotten now, but he was an Anglo-Quebec writer, very famous in his day, Hugh MacLennan. It's quite a forgettable name in a way. Doesn't it sound like not the name you're going to remember by this time tomorrow? Hugh MacLennan, and his most famous novel is Two Solitudes, and I've never read it, but the one that my mom had, and I read her copy when I was a high school student, is The Watch That Ends the Night. If I ever get around to doing Dave of Wild Reads tag about the adult novel, this would be the one I would choose, because I read it, and it was a novel for grown-ups, and I wasn't really grown up, but I loved it. Can't remember a thing about it. Number 4, a book you want to reread because you didn't understand it the first time. A book that I didn't understand is a bad book, in my estimation. So this one is a book I might try again, and that would be Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. But I think I'd rather stick pins in my eyes. Number 5, a book that you'd like even more upon a second reading, or a book that would benefit from a second reading. Hands down, Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Tien. As I keep saying, you must be getting sick of hearing me saying it's my most favorite novel. I would love to reread it. Probably get a lot more out of it the second time. And White Tears by Harry Kunzru. A book that I didn't completely understand, but loved, and think that it would just open up even more to me on the second reading. 6, a book you will read for the rest of your life. All of Virginia Woolf. I guess I would say now that Virginia Woolf is my favorite writer. And I've read, I'm not sure, half of her novels. I've read Mrs. Dalloway 3 times. I've read The Waves. I read To the Lighthouse. I read A Voyage Out. So what's left? There's not too many left, but I haven't read Orlando. I haven't read whatever else is out there. Jacob's Room. But I think that I will just be constantly reading and rereading Virginia Woolf for the rest of my life. She's that amazing. Also, a novella that I read a couple years ago. I forget when it was published. I want to say 1980s. From the UK, A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. I really loved that story, and it was about 90 pages or 120 pages. Set between the wars is my memory. It's about an art restorer who is hired to go to this old church in the countryside to uncover a mural that had been painted over 600 years before or something on the church. And then it's the relationships he develops with the people in that small town. And it's just like covers all the big themes of literature. Love, lust, death. And it's all there. I think I said in my Goodreads review, I'd be a fool not to reread it every couple of years, and really, wouldn't need to read many other novels, because he kind of ties up a bow around all those major life themes. And that's being silly, but it's an amazing little novella, punching far above his weight, if I can use a crude sports metaphor. So that is my take on the ReRead Book Tag. Thanks, Juan, for tagging me. I'm going to tag a few people. I don't think they've been tagged. The BookTube debutante, Bruno, Mark Nash, and Oly Bliss. Thanks for watching.